It's hard to believe that there could be so many different facets to the actual ball used on the gridiron. Timothy V. Brown of Football Archaeology joins us today to talk about a special tidbit he had on right and left-handed footballs. Tim has these details and his special, unique circumstance of the football coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And it is Tuesday, and everybody that follows us knows what happens on Tuesday. We have our friend Timothy P. Brown of FootballArchaeology.com join us for another glimpse back in football history and learning something great. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Good to be with you this evening, and look forward to chatting a little bit about footballs and stuff like that.
Yeah, you are very festive between your background and the hat. Is that Chicago Cardinals or Chicago Maroons? I mean,
That is correct. So this
Okay.
is the background is from the 1905, 1905 or 1906. I think it's 1905. Spalding's, their official football guide. And so, at least for our purpose today, I'm going to say it's from the 1905 book. And
yeah, since they have the All-America team for 1904, it looks like
yeah, okay, yeah, so that makes
encrypted. So
sense.
it's got to be that's probably
And
Vince
who was
Rugen's side.
national champs in 1905?
In 1905, Michigan.
Chicago Maroons.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Because
You gave it away to me, and I didn't even you
yeah,
hit me over the head with a bat, and I
they
didn't feel it.
they beat Michigan in the last game of the season on a play that didn't count the next year because they changed some rules. But they won 2-0. So
2-0. Okay. I think
that is
we've talked about that game before in one of our episodes.
I think we did a story, or we did a podcast on it, and I've also, here and there, like on Twitter or something, somebody will say, if you could go back in time and watch one game, what would it be? For me, that would be the game.
Yeah, boy, that's
1905 Chicago, Michigan. So
just think about the coaches from that game: Amos Alonzo Stagg and Fielding Yost on Michigan sideline. Wow,
yeah,
that's good
Walter
stuff.
Eckersall. It had what's his name from his longtime coach at Carnegie, Stefan.
Mhm. Walter Steffen.
You had Hugo Bezdek, and that's just the Chicago guys, and there were others,
Right.
So
Yeah. Wow. Great story. We'll have to rekindle that, put the link for that podcast episode in again so people can enjoy that. That's a good one to listen to. But tonight we have a topic that you wrote on a recent tidbit, and it's called right and left-handed footballs, which sort of caught me by surprise. I remember when I read it back in February when you put it on, I'm like, wow, left-handed footballs. Who'd have thought? So why don't you tell us a little bit about that tonight?
yeah, so it's kind of I think it's a fun story just because when we think about balls being handed, baseball gloves, there's left-handed and right-handed, and or any kind of glove, basically, I guess. But balls, especially round balls, there's tends to be, you can throw it, pick it up or whatever with your right and left hand. Bowling balls are the only ones that I really can think of that aren't, because you got to stick your thumb in there and fingers and whatnot. So those are left and right-handed, I believe. But
Well, they're drilled right to the individual. So
yeah. So anyways, and then footballs obviously aren't round, but so we tend to think of them as universal, anyways, right? And for the most part, that has been the case. But when they started using footballs in the evening, they started painting the balls. That's early 1900s. As far as I know, Stagg and Chicago actually were the first people that I've got documentation that they painted a ball white because they had late classes, and so they couldn't practice until it was dusk and yada yada. So they start painting balls, and then other people picked up on that. And generally the paint on the ball was slipperier than just the tanned leather. So that was always a bit of a problem. But there just weren't, other than practice and then the really pretty occasional night games, people didn't really need to use painted balls. But as lighting got better, and in the 30s in particular, is really when lighting kind of took off, right? And so high schools were playing under the lights, and a lot of colleges added lighting. Um, and I think that I don't really have documented evidence of this, but I believe that was so for sure. That's when striping came on the balls. Now I think the primary reason for that was because if you striped the ball at the end, it wasn't as slippery as a fully painted ball. So, and there was also this whole issue of, what I call the camouflaging effect, so that, a lot of teams were still wearing the brown friction strips or ovals on their jerseys. And so a brown ball against a brown patch could be kind of hidden. Our teams are starting to wear white jerseys then. Stanford was one of them, and there were others. But so then a white painted ball against a white jersey, was problematic. So, anyways, they started striping them, and again, I think it's both the slipperiness and then so it's a functionality reason, and then this camouflaging effect. And so, so it's just one of those things where like we know where the stripes go on the ball, right?
Right.
Everybody knows it's like 2 inches to 2.25 inches in from the tip of the ball, and yada, I mean, it's a set place. Um, and so, we're used to that because that's the only thing we've ever known. And yet, if you go back and look at the balls of the 30s and into the 50s, originally a lot of the stripes were closer to the laces. They had double striping, and striping in a couple different patterns. They had stripes. One or two manufacturers put out balls striped longitudinally rather than, um, you know, latitudinally. So anyways, it's just one of those things where, it's just kind of a fun thing where, how did they figure this out? And so eventually, but by the, early 1950s, guys like Otto Graham were complaining about that the stripe on the ball just happened to hit exactly where he put his thumb when he put his hand on the ball. And so, he would complain about it. And then people like John Brody, a little bit later, he'd scrape the paint off the balls that he was going to use, because that was still when teams supplied their own balls and things like that. So eventually there was enough complaints about this that what the NFL did in around in the late 60s, the NFL eliminated the stripe on the underside of the ball. So each ball has 4 panels traditionally. So on the panel where a right-handed quarterback's thumb would go, they got rid of the stripe on it's on 2 different panels because they can hold the ball this way or that way, right? And so if you look at balls from that era, there's a missing stripe on 2 of the panels only have 1 stripe rather than 2. And 2 bottom panels. So then so everybody was happy with that. And then these 2 Nimrods, one called Kenny Stabler and the other named Bobby Douglas, who played for the Bears, they were left-handed. And so they show up and they're like, hey, these these balls make sense for right-handed quarterbacks. What about us, right? Help, give me a little bit of love. And so, Davis of Oakland complained about it, and then in the preseason of 1970, the NFL provided balls that were left-handed balls, in addition to the right-handed balls that they had provided. So then, as an official, the official had to be, they would mark the balls, and I think they just use like magic marker, and they put R or L on the balls to designate that it's a right or left-handed ball, and depending on which quarterback was in the game, that's the ball that they used. And so, I mean, it's just, just added to the work that the officials had to deal with. They had to inspect more balls, all that kind of stuff, right? And then somebody finally had the idea. The NFL continued with their right and left-handed balls until 1976, at which point they dropped stripes, right? So before that, they'd use a stripe for night games, but the plain ball for day games. So then but in 1975, the NFL or the NCAA adopted the they adopted a ball that had no striping on the bottom panels, right? So, and that's the way it is today. So if you look at an NCAA ball, there's stripes on the top two panels, the ones that adjoin the laces, but there's no striping on the bottom panels. And the CFL, on the other hand, they have stripes that encircle the ball. So I've always kind of made the little joke that, apparently, even though the CFL primarily has American quarterbacks in that league, they somehow managed to throw spirals in Canada with a fully striped ball that American quarterbacks can't do when they're in America. So, it's just it's just, it's one of those things. I think a lot of times I think that stuff is as much branding as anything else. It's like the CFL wants to have a distinctive ball. And that's one way to do it. But, I don't know. I just think it's kind of a funny little story.
Yeah, it definitely is. But one thing that sort of made me think, and I had to keep looking over because I have a high school ball that's got the half stripes like you're talking about on the top two panels, the
Yeah.
panels that touch the strings.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if the big thing was with Brody and Otto Graham of their thumb resting on it, why would they put the stripes on that side of the ball? You would think their thumb would be touching because their fingers would be on the strings, their thumb would be on one of those two panels, right-handed or left-handed. You would think it would almost make more sense if that was the case, the stripes would be on the bottom two panels that aren't touching the
Well,
stripe.
no, the thumb's going to rest on the bottom panels.
On the bottom panels. I'm
Yeah.
trying to.
So here is this is an arena football that one of my sons grabbed at some point. We
Okay.
got Most Davis to sign it, but so no striping. But if my hand, it's going to be tough with the way this thing is working. But basically, your stripe or your fingers are.
Okay, so I got
I
that
got to be a
just
little
now.
further away.
Okay.
And then my thumb is down here on the bottom panel.
Okay. I see. I
Right?
understand now.
And if I'm a lefty, so my thumb is on this hand because I'm a righty.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a lefty, my thumb is on this panel over here.
It does go on the bottom panel. Okay. I'm sorry.
And
That
so,
makes sense.
I have in the book that I recently released, The History of the Football, I have images that I got from the Heritage, not Heritage Foundation, but Heritage Auctions. They had sold it was a right-handed football that they sold, an NFL right-handed football that they sold a while back, and they gave me permission to use those images in the book.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Those are in there.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that in a second here. But I got another question as I was thinking here. Now, a few weeks ago, you talked about we had the helmet trickeration episode
Yep.
where that sort of spawned the markings on the helmet so that it would not look like a ball.
Yep.
And so were the stripes on the ball about the same time as the putting decor on the helmets to make it so they didn't look
Yeah.
like a ball?
So just to clarify, that helmet trickeration story that we talked about was from like 1905, right?
Okay.
So now, and the striping on the helmets didn't kick in until I want to say like 35 or something like that. Anyways, it was, I think it was in the 30s, but it was for the same reason. It was because people were, there's a running back who would throw his brown leather helmet off and to simulate a fumble. So the first story or first documentation I found of anybody adding stripes to a ball came in a BYU versus, it would be Northern Colorado now. And they had a game where one of the teams, I think it was BYU, was wearing white jerseys, and Northern Colorado was going to had brown pants that more or less matched the color of the ball. And so they kind of got into a little bit of a peeing match on that. And the only way they could settle it was to put stripes on the ball. So, and maybe somebody else did it before that, but that's the first story I came across as evidence of that happening. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it was kind of, I'm going to say 33 or something in that kind of range.
So right. So right in the same middle of that decade then for both.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And
Right.
then it became, so it's funny, there's some inventions like that the manufacturers don't really pick up for a while, but that was one where pretty quickly there were balls available from the manufacturers that were striped or painted and striped, because the white ones would have black stripes, the brown ones would have white stripes. There were orange balls with black stripes,
And,
yellow, you know.
and ironically enough, that's your favorite decade when they had the ugliest uniforms, according to
Yep.
some of your writings.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
A lot of eye candy in the mid 30s for football.
that's right. That's right. And unfortunately, there aren't as many color photos from that period that I can use as evidence, but some of them, even the black and white, it's pretty clear how ugly they are.
Well, maybe some of those new modern AI apps that color in,
Yeah.
your old family photos are in black and white and everything, and they look pretty good. So maybe some of that'll help us to
Yeah,
augment the history here.
I've played around with some of those things, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to be able to show using AI images.
Well,
And
I thought earlier when you were reaching back for the football, I saw a box of 64 Crayolas back there. So maybe
oh,
maybe
uh,
no, we can't see anything back there. We just
yeah,
see you disappear into your background. I wanted to get you thinking a little bit. But Tim, you alluded to it a little bit that you have a book out
yeah,
on this very subject. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
yeah. It's just so. I'll just be real quick, but what I've found is I've now got on the coming up on 1,000 articles on my football archaeology site, and I had 3 books that I published earlier on football. And so, I've got, there's kind of information scattered all over the place. And so I'm starting a series of books to kind of condense or consolidate information on specific topics. And so the first one that I did was on the history of the football. So it just looks at, like, where did the ball come from? How did it get its shape? Why is it shaped? Why does it have this prolate spheroid shape? Uh, why is it constructed the way it's constructed? How did it change over time? Why did it change over time? What were some of the influences? When did it get smaller, thinner, etc.? And so, as it transitioned from rugby to football. So anyways, just kind of tells the story of all of those changes. And, it's just a fun, I think it's a fun little read that kind of just goes into, as far as I know, it's the first book that looks at, the history of the football. And maybe that should tell me something, but I think it was kind of a fun topic.
No, it's definitely a fun topic, and I appreciate you letting me have an advanced copy to read it, and it's a great read, folks, and definitely want to get a copy of that. And Tim, as long as we're plugging it, how can people get their hands on the book?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, and I don't know if it will be immediately available through like Walmart and Barnes and Noble, but I'll just tell you, I make the most money if you buy it from Amazon. I don't make as much money if you buy it from the other sources, but if that's what you need to do, have at it. But it's available in paperback. It's 135 pages, so pretty quick read. So it's available in paperback, Kindle, so ebook. It's now available on audio. So if you prefer to consume in the car, it's not my beautiful voice, it's some artificial voice, but it sounds pretty good. And then and if you have Kindle Unlimited, if you've got that subscription, the book's free. So at least ebook. So
my second favorite F word, free.
Yeah,
food comes first.
I still get paid for it. Kind of like, it's like Spotify. The artists still get paid if you listen to your music on Spotify, but just not as much as if you buy it straight out.
Yeah. Well, Tim, we appreciate it. Of course, folks, you can visit Tim on his website, footballarchaeology.com. Check out his tidbits like the one that we talked about tonight and more, that he has 1,000 articles, like he said. So, Tim, we thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you again next Tuesday.
Very good. Thanks, Darren.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.